This looks really fun.
That's what I thought when I was walking over with Kimber. I'm like, this is great.
It does look more full, though.
Really odd.
Meeting in session. Welcome to Centerville City Council meeting of March 17th. And it is a different type of format we have this week for sure from what we were doing 2 weeks ago. So let's start with a roll call, starting at the end.
Meekum present.
Yent's present.
Phil, are you here? Tammy? She's not?
More present.
Oh,
I am. I just am on mute and forget to push the button.
Great.
Ivy present.
McEwen here.
Let it be noted that all five are present in one form or another. Councilwoman Fillmore, do you have a prayer or thought for us?
Sure, I can pray.
Okay, we'd love that.
All right. Our most gracious Father in heaven, we ask that Thou wilt be with us as a community, as a state, as a nation, as a world in this challenging time, that we might be wise in our actions, that those individuals whose lives are being deeply changed and touched by this virus and its repercussions, that those people will be blessed with thy peace and help and support from those around them, that we all might be strong and resilient, and that we might learn and grow and become closer knit as a world people and family. We ask that thy power might be with those who need to stay completely on task with their responsibilities to help others. We ask thee to please bless and strengthen medical staff and emergency staff and our government leaders as they work endlessly to deal with the challenges that are coming. And we are thankful for our blessings, and we are thankful for our system of government, and that we might be able to be a part of it and participate in it. And we say these things in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Thank you. If you'd all rise and repeat the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You there?
Sorry, I hit the hang up button instead of the mute button.
All right, we just repeated the pledge, so we're now on to the open session of this meeting. This is where anyone that wants to come to either the podium and express what they're on their mind is welcome to. So just keep your comments to a couple minutes. So anyone that wants to, come on up. Since we don't have any comments from the open session, let's go to the business of the meeting. And the first item is deferral agreement for installation of public improvements. There's information within your packet. And Lisa, I thought, where'd she go? This is like first time in a year, isn't it, that side? You want to introduce this topic for us?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Your first item on the agenda is a deferral agreement for public improvements, and the applicant is Fred Nelson. The Nelsons recently constructed a home at 367 West, 1950 North. And they've completed the construction of the house, and during the final inspection, the city engineer realized that it didn't have any sidewalks, which we typically require as part of building construction. So it was required as part of the final inspection. However, there are not any sidewalks in the vicinity except for one neighbor in this area. So 1950 really does not have any sidewalks in this area. And so staff has looked at this. The applicant has provided some reasons that qualify under the ordinances, as well as some aerials showing that this area does not have sidewalks. So staff is recommending approval of the deferral of these improvements. And so there is a memo in your packet from Randy Randall. He's reviewed this. So under our ordinances, these deferral requests go to the Public Works Director, and he's required to go through the ordinance requirements. And he's reviewed the application and is recommending approval. And so once I received that approval, I prepared the deferral agreement, which is in your packet. And the applicant, Fred Nelson, is also here. If you'd like to hear from him, or I'm sure he'd just be happy to rely on staff's recommendation for approval.
So we have Fred and his wife here. Would anyone like to bring up front?
I don't think we need to hear from him. This is pretty straightforward. I motion that we accept the deferral agreement as recommended by staff.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call vote, starting with Councilman Meekum.
I'm busy cleaning. Yes.
Yeah, aye.
Aye.
Councilman,
Aye.
Aye.
motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Thanks for being here, in case we didn't need to speak with you. Anything you want to say before you go?
Thank you.
Okay, great to have you here.
Enjoy your new house.
And thank you, Mike, as well. All right, let's move to item number 2. This is electronic meetings policy amendment. I think this is kind of allows us, we passed one of these at the fire board yesterday, to potentially do meetings electronically as well too, but Lisa, you want to tell us more?
Yes, your next item is to amend your electronic meeting policy, which we do have in place, and we've recently updated it. I think it was just last year or this year. We made some amendments, and we decided to allow electronic meetings with just one person from the public body present at the anchor location. But given what's occurring now and wanting to have electronic meetings where perhaps no one should be here other than necessary staff for the anchor location, staff is recommending that you amend your electronic meetings policy to not require any of the public body to be present at the anchor location, so that you could all just call into the meeting. Now, in my opinion, the statutes still require an anchor location, so we probably have to have a staff member here, and still requires, in my opinion, again, that the public be able to access the meetings, but they may be trying to work on some sort of emergency amendment to that at the state level, which will allow us to conduct our meetings electronically, so that we're not all congregating here, even with the 6-foot distances. I do think that it will be problematic from a practical standpoint to have those kinds of meetings. So again, if we don't have, other than necessary items on the agenda, we'll probably be canceling items and having much shorter meetings. And if we can cancel meetings altogether in the next few weeks, that might be advisable as well. But the state statute does not require any minimum, and so we're just recommending this quick change to our electronic meeting policy, not requiring any members of the public body to be present at the anchor location.
Do we actually have equipment to allow that?
Yeah, that other people could call in, how many people can call in. Yeah, we talked about that, and we will have to, make sure that we have that capability, that multiple people can just call in on a conference call. I would still recommend the change to your policy. Obviously, we have to implement it, but I would still recommend that change. If you're not comfortable making this change permanently to your electronic meetings policy, I think what some other cities are doing is once they declare the local emergency declaration, then they can come back with another proclamation saying, okay, just for this emergency, and when we're under a local emergency, we will make these kinds of changes to our electronic meeting policy. But I think I would still recommend this change, and so that we have as much flexibility moving forward.
I'm supportive of the change, but I'm only going to let Tammy make the motion, because she's the only one electronic, right? None of us should be making that motion.
I so move that we accept the change in electronic policy.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Councilman Ince, you want to vote? Go to the right.
I don't know that I believe it's necessary, but
Aye.
And then is that?
Sorry, I
Yeah,
jumped.
where am I?
Go ahead, Tammy.
Go ahead.
Aye.
I'm with Bill, but aye.
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 That motion passes 5-0.
Hasn't this opened up your imagination, guys? I mean,
Yeah. Okay, item number 3. This is an item that we had extensive report on in our emergency meeting 2 days ago. However, there has been some amendments to that. And Chief, did you want to just kind of tell us about the amendments and other things you feel we need to know?
Sure, thank you. So we've been working on this since we met on Sunday, and so basically that's Lisa, Alex, and I that have been going through this and trying to make some corrections and additions and some subtractions and redundancy and so forth. A lot of the corrections that were made, or there are several corrections that were made that were grammatical in nature, but there were some things that have some substance to it. Both Alex and Lisa pointed out some pretty important things, I think, as we went along here that needed to be addressed. So what I'm going to do is just kind of go through this and point out some of the places that where some red lines were made and suggestions for changes. I'm just scrolling down through it in my document here. So bear with me for just a second. So there was a suggestion by Alex that maybe we should be designating those who would be receive priority for vaccines and moving it from level 2 to level 1. I'm not opposed to that. I don't see that is a problem. It probably is something in our planning to do anyway. And one thing I want to emphasize here is this plan was obviously developed with the current situation in mind, but that's not its only focus. It's supposed to act as a plan that we have on our shelf there going forward in the event of any type of similar situation. So the plan isn't supposed to be narrowly built around COVID-19 and what's going on right now, but generally about an infectious disease outbreak. And so it's built with these different levels with that in mind. There was also a comment here made by Alexandra in reference to what does sick mean, and I apologize because the particular document I'm looking at doesn't have all the changes that I oh, here we go. Okay. All right, so I'm on page 5. Maybe we better go back up because I wasn't seeing a lot of those. Let me get turned around here. So.
Yeah, it's on page 5, it's in level 3, we're talking about require sick employees, that we're talking about.
Yeah, so instead of saying sick, which I do think that could be problematic, require employees who are experiencing symptoms that may be related to an outbreak of disease to remain home. So I think that just kind of delineates it a little bit better. And then instead of requiring a questionnaire for employees, which I think we all had a little bit of concern about, advise employees who are coming to work of symptoms to watch for concerning the disease. So go ahead and move down to the next one. You can see some grammatical errors.
Paul, I see that as being different from what's been eliminated. I mean, I agree with what you just added, but I think that the questionnaire when somebody's been to an area is still appropriate, isn't it?
If we go back up to level 2, I think that there's level 1, level 2. All right. So employees who have traveled outside the U.S. within the previous 14 days may be asked to fill out a health screening form to assist supervisors in assessing whether there is a valid concern about the employee being at work. So I think that's the only place where we actually put in there that they would be filling out a questionnaire of sorts. And Lisa, if you want to chime in here, I think there was a concern from a legal point of view about requiring employees to fill out a questionnaire, and the idea was that maybe we should just inform them of, hey, these are the symptoms, and with the idea that they would be letting us know if they've been experiencing any of those things.
But I see Councilmember Ince's point, because what he's saying is, I think our concern was just, do we really want to have a questionnaire for every employee every day that's coming to work? And so we wanted to change that to just advise employees, look, these are the symptoms, please don't come to work if you're sick. But this second part that we did strike out is only addressing if you travel to a high-risk area as identified by the CDC. Maybe under those circumstances, we do want to ask some questions.
I agree.
Okay.
So maybe just divide, add that back in, but make it a separate bullet point.
That's what I would think.
Okay.
I think your addition
And
is
I'm
totally
okay with
appropriate.
that. I think that even the governor was advising to have some questionnaires. So I think with that restriction, we could just add that back in as a separate bullet point.
Okay, that sounds, yeah, that's,
And I think it's in 2 places.
We
It
have to
was.
be careful about the health questionnaire, because we cannot ask somebody to disclose a condition, like,
Right, and the questionnaire will, and I think we address it also in the travel area, that, you have to do some self-quarantining if you've been to level 2 or 3 areas. So on that one, yes, I think we need to come up with some legally advised language, but it's more just asking the symptoms. Have you had a cough? Have you had a fever? Have you been in this area? We're not asking, any.
does that sound okay to you, George?
yeah, that's fine. I just want to make sure that we were careful that we're not, employees
Yeah.
can disclose any health condition they want to the employer, but you can't ask them about a health condition.
That's why we wanted to take it out in the first place, but I think, again, that's a good point, that if they have been to an area, then we probably
they
should.
have
That's
been
a,
to
that's a
questions.
reasonable
If
question
they
to
have
ask.
been to an area, can we just state that you can't come back to work for 14 days?
Well, if the CDC, we say that back in the travel sections, that we've added that if you do decide, voluntarily, your own personal reasons, to go to a CDC designated level 2 or 3 area, that you have to follow CDC, state and local health department guidelines. And then also that we may, say, yeah, we'd like to quarantine you, but, or we'd like you to either work from home or stay home, and in those cases, we will have to pay them, if it's our decision. So we're trying to make that distinction. If they decide to go somewhere and it's mandatory that they be quarantined, they're probably going to be using their own vacation leave. If we're the ones saying, we'd like you to stay home just because we're worried, for instance, the example was Disneyland, we may ask them to stay home, but under those circumstances, if the CDC isn't saying quarantining is required, then we'd probably pay them for admin leave on that.
I'm totally in support, Bill, of your request to add that. I think it's appropriate.
We need to stop using the term or the place that it's called, maybe the happiest place on earth, instead
Happiest
of
place on
using the name of the location.
I think it's trademarked too. You're going to get sued either way.
I just meant general.
What is
I
it?
was-
So one of the discussions we had on Sunday was you didn't feel that we could tell people they couldn't go someplace if it was personal. Remember that?
Yes.
Couldn't travel.
Well, there are some legal issues with saying, yeah, you can't go on your vacation, although we can regulate,
Sure,
staff
we
time.
can regulate
for-
coming back and those
Yeah.
kinds of things. I sent you an email this afternoon, you may not have seen it.
I
yet,
saw it.
That there are others who disagree with that and are telling people you have to have permission to travel.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned, it was
And it was
a
Hillfield.
military, it was military.
Well, he was non-military, he was a civilian employee.
Oh.
He is a civilian employee at Hillfield, but I bring that up, and I don't know that I'm not particularly encouraging it. I'm saying that there are other organizations who are saying, no, in this situation,
We want to be able to
we want
access,
to be able
yeah.
to control.
And I think that, again, and once we declare a local emergency, we might have additional authority to restrict travel and flow in our city. So, yes, there may come a time, once we've invoked that we would have additional authority to do so. But at this point, it's not in our plan, and we haven't implemented that. But again, as the news changes and circumstances change, yes, it may be something that's
Well,
implemented.
that's my concern, because you say to me, well, you go to this country, I come home and I say, I feel fine, well, nobody wants to work with me, and so then I get another 14 days paid off, I can go back to the country again. I mean, I don't see any downside to discourage me from going to that country, because I'm just gonna get 2 weeks off when I get back, because I.
So
know
are you
that
saying
I'm
you'd like to
going.
quarantine all your employees to the local area? That's what you're asking?
So I've had a
Short of something like martial law, we still have freedom of movement, so I don't know how
Yeah.
you can restrict
Can't-
anyone on their own time.
Can't
to when they
overreach,
go.
we got freedoms in this country, so.
And I'm not saying we might not get there, I'm just asking, is that what you want at this point? And it's not in our level 4 plan.
And I don't
But-
guess I wanna tell them they can't go, I wanna say, if you choose to go, then when you come home, you've got 14 days before you can come back to work,
and we're not gonna pay
and
you.
we're not gonna pay you. That's more
Well,
my
that's what we've
concern.
tried to say.
So,
That's exactly what we're saying. They have to use
Yeah.
their leave.
Their
We're not
leave.
going to pay them.
No,
They'd have
but
to
you
leave.
said that if we make the determination that they can't come back, we have to pay them.
No,
Well,
that's
I-
Well,
different.
that's why we want to rely
Yeah.
on medical data. So if
Right.
they're going to a safe place like Idaho,
Well, not anymore.
okay. If they go to some
Salt.
So, I mean, the
fictitious
interesting.
safe place, is it really any different than our grocery store?
Well, the interesting that came up in our discussion was, if there's a request for travel or leave, and that I, as the city manager, approve or department head, they want to go to, I don't know what's, New York. I say, no, you're not going. I have that authority to deny that vacation request, but let's say it's Friday night, they're off of work, and they decide to fly to New York on their own personal time, and then come back Sunday night. I have no authority to say yes or no to that. Now, what recourse do we have to say, do I say, where did you go? What did you do? I mean, where are we stepping into where I'm intruding into people's personal lives that people need to self-declare? Because we're not going to police every employee. That's just a risk we have to take. And that's why this is so concerning for us, because of how contagious this disease is, that we are not martial law. We are not some other countries, right? We treat this differently. But,
Oh, like I said on Sunday, people still have the freedom to be stupid during a pandemic, and you can't really regulate that other than ask people to be professional. And if you see that they're sick, sure, at that point you can send them home, but that's an administrative decision you've made. It's not their choice.
But I think we can continue to monitor that, is what I'm saying. I hear the concern, but I think there are issues, and I don't think we're at that level yet.
So I'm-
So I think we arrived at put it back in. Was that where we ended?
Right.
That's where I think we ended.
I
and
have
then-
one fictitious question though, so I leave and I go to New York for the weekend, I come home, and all of a sudden I have a fever, but I come to work, and you say to me, you're sick, you need to go home. Then does that mean I don't have to use my own sick leave because you just sent me home?
And
So
I-
I would be better off to come with my fever, so I don't have to use my sick leave.
And I think we've addressed that
No.
as well, and we've tried to explain to employees is to use common sense. We do have sick leave policies, and we've been using those for a long time. So if an employee comes to work and they are exhibiting symptoms, and we say, we'd like you to go home, in my opinion, we're sending them home because they're sick, and they need to use their sick leave. If they say they don't want to come to work because they're worried about things, but we think that they're an essential employee and we want them here, they're going to have to use their own vacation. And if we also say, well, we still need you here because you're law enforcement, these are issues, but I think that we've addressed those in the the last two paragraphs. So yes, if you're sick, you use your sick leave. If you're on vacation, you use your vacation leave. It's only if we don't have a basis and we just say, you know what, we think we want people to go home, and it actually doesn't say you automatically get paid. I drafted it in such a way that says, you know, if, you know, it's up to the city manager to determine whether you're eligible for administrative leave. So I'm not guaranteeing that employees are going to get paid, but we do want to provide that security to them in the
Right.
short term, that if we're sending them home, we hope they have enough work to telework, but they're probably going to be on administrative leave. If we're in the same situation a month from now, this doesn't guarantee that they will be getting that
So
administrative.
Lisa's going into point that, so let's say we have an employee that maybe their spouse was tested positive, and I may say, go home. I don't want you here, but let's say it's an employee that cannot work from home. That's maybe an area where I might approve administrative leave. But if it's an employee that can work from home, you go home, here's a bunch of work, you can telework. But, you know, having a spouse or a family member test positive, that's a concern, but maybe they're not sick. And so those are areas where we need to have some discretion, that we can't just write it down and say, here's the answer for all things.
And I agree with all of that.
But I think that's an interesting, you know, I mean, I love these hypotheticals because they'll probably be quarantined if their spouse has it. And so
Right.
then, to me, that's sick leave. But yeah, we can
Potentially.
make those fine.
And then
lines.
but it's case by case. Each time, well, we don't know that we need to evaluate each case. It's not going to be the same each time. But we need the freedom to, you know, have the discretion to deal with each one individually.
Right, and that's the difficulty of doing a plan, because you want to make it general enough, but not, you don't want to get too specific about things, because the situations are so variable. Okay, so we changed, by the way, once we kind of get this all done and approved, we're going to put this in format where it's Roman numerals and letters so that we can refer to things, you know, specifically. The bullet point there where it says prohibit or significantly reduce. So it took out no in-person meetings, because as we found out in the Monday and so forth, there are going to be times when we need to have in-person meetings. We just need to use mitigation strategies when we have those. So took that no out. Advise employees, going down to the next red line area, advise employees who are coming to work of symptoms to watch for concerning disease, and that was something we talked about. And so did we decide we were going to put something back in on this to do a questionnaire?
Yes, so
With,
both in level 3 and level 4, we're adding back in the required questionnaire if they go to a high-risk area.
Okay, all right, sounds good. And then the next bullet down, we had kind of a point-blank statement, no visitors in employee work areas. After a little more consideration, we realized that, hey, we're going to have some people come in to do some work. So all persons in these areas shall be limited to those designated by the controlling department head as authorized to be there. So I put that language in there to again, giving department heads that ability to make those decisions, who's going to be in their work area and who's not. If we have something that has a need to be there for some reason, but they're not an employee, they can make that decision.
So does that need to be altered a little bit, because you left the no visitors in employee work areas, or should it say without approval or something?
We could actually take that, probably that first no visitors, and then just leave it as all persons in these areas.
That'd be good.
Okay.
Does that sound reasonable?
Sounds reasonable.
Okay, looks like some grammatical corrections there. Wash your hands
Sorry.
with warm.
Just on that social distancing, sorry, I didn't recognize this before, but I think I'd rather just say increase social distancing, semicolon, it's recommended to be 6 feet away from others. I don't want to confirm that it's safe or not.
It's safe, yeah,
Let's
that's a
just
good
say
point.
it's recommended.
Recommended, okay. Good point. That's why we have attorneys.
It's the third bullet point from the bottom.
Okay, so fourth point, bullet point down here, page 7. If you were sick, and that's where the comment that Alex made about, well, what is sick? And maybe sick doesn't, if you got a tummy ache, maybe that's not part of the symptoms that are part of the issue that we're looking at. So we changed that. Let's see, if you have to quarantine, talked about there are several things you can do while at home. And then moving down into the specific precautions for the various different departments. I've added language in there. Go back up just a little bit. There you go. So and this is right. This is what's been. This has been implemented by me currently with my officers, just by my order to my officers right now, that they are, when practicable, they should be using masks, eye protection, and gloves when they're going into someone's home and when they're making an arrest or transporting a prisoner. I'm especially concerned about those because you got someone in a prisoner cage right behind you, you're in an enclosed area. And then when you're going into people's homes, quite often that's on a domestic. Chance there's going to be an arrest there. You're going into an environment that's unknown. You don't know what's going on there. It's enclosed. So I think that makes sense.
I haven't been in police cars that much. Do the prisoners' cages, are they just kind of a grid across that, or is it protected by plastic?
It's protected by plastic, but there are openings. There's a grid that allows air to exchange back and forth. But there is a part of it that's protected by plastic.
But if, and I don't mean to be crude, but if someone tried to spit on an officer, could they?
There is plastic that would prevent the spit from hitting the officer. It would be pretty hard to actually hit the officer. But there is airflow that goes around.
I assumed there was airflow, but
Yeah.
I didn't know if there was plastic across that section.
Yeah, and that's definitely an issue. We do have people spitting at us in the car.
On bullet point 2, could you explain just in brief what a medical call is and what it isn't? I think there's a potential for misinterpretation.
So it would be a call from dispatch requesting EMS services due to either an injury or a medical problem of some sort. So, I mean, that's a very typical language that we use is a medical. We're going on a medical, you're being dispatched on a medical. We have various levels of medical responses, but as a matter of fact, this came up today. Bountiful contacted me because we were dispatched by them, and they weren't aware that we had already instigated this protocol because it was my good intentions to call their dispatch, but I kept getting busy doing other things and never did call them. But Assistant Chief Ed Beeler called and recommended that we basically stop being dispatched to medicals unless we're needed by EMS. And the situation that happened in Bountiful that kind of prompted this was their officers showed up on what we call a Delta Response Medical, and the medical personnel were suiting up with Tyvek suits on and masks and everything, and they explicitly told the officers to don't go in the house. And so there was some, thinking there, well, maybe we should change our protocols. If they're doing this, if the medical people are doing this and they're telling us not to go in, then maybe we should be thinking about what we do.
So the concern that was presented to me is if our EMS is currently occupied, we have a person in medical distress at the other end of town, what do we do?
Well, we can put some language in there to cover that. It does say unless requested by EMS, unless called by EMS to assist. We could add some language in there that says if there's no EMS resources available, that we would respond.
Is it practical from a dispatch standpoint to know that? I mean,
yeah, they would. They would know that if there's EMS available or not.
I would feel more comfortable in having it be a fallback position if there's no other services available. Definitely not point on that, but
Yeah.
I recognize that represents a risk to the officers, but from a community standpoint, I've heard some feedback on that already.
Okay. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Really?
I'm okay with that. Yeah, I kind of entertain the idea of maybe on, if it's an active bleeder or something like that. So I'm open to that.
Okay.
The next bullet point down hasn't been, there's no correction there, but just so that everybody knows, the jail has sent us notice that they are highly recommending that no one be brought to the jail unless it's a person's crime that's of a violent nature. So they're not accepting them at the jail unless
Unless it's a what crime?
a person's crime, so a crime against a person of a violent nature. Generally speaking. We do have, the ability to call and kind of plead our case and say, this is why this is important, this person needs to be booked, and they can make that determination on a case by case, which is what happened last night. We had a case where it didn't fall under that category, but we were able to get the person booked.
So I'm having a hard time understanding. Can you explain just a little more?
Someone assaults someone else, at domestic violence, aggravated assault, something like that.
If somebody steals your car, they're not gonna put them in jail.
Yeah, probably not. That would be a property crime.
But what, the ones you described would be an assault on a person, would be a person crime.
That's what he's saying,
Yeah.
those kind are gonna.
That
They
would-
will accept person crimes.
Okay.
They will accept those, but if we take a shoplifter up there, they're gonna say no. Don't really want that to be too awfully.
Yeah, please, let's not continue to broadcast that. That's very unsettling, to say
That
the
really
least.
is.
So, let's see here. The other changes there have to do with no ride-along passengers.
That's just for me.
And then there was some redundancy there that we took out that was covered in other areas. I did add a little bit there for fingerprint services, except as required for investigative purposes, will be suspended, and we're referring them to BCI. So a person can go out to BCI in Salt Lake and get their fingerprints taken out there. Let's see, where are we? Thorough cleaning, so we had Clorox in there, we didn't want to have an actual name, so. Limit or postpone training involving groups of people in a room together without maintaining a 6-foot separation. So there was a concern there about, looking at our training, what we're doing. And then citations, we've received authorization from our prosecutor that we don't have to have them sign the citation, just deliver it to them and serve it on them. And then we went through some precautions of the other departments in the court. So this is an area where Lisa was able to help us, and of course state law dictates certain things. We cannot close court. Court still has to be available to people, but the court can reschedule things and move it ahead or out of ways on their calendar, short-term cancellations, and then limit people inside of the courtroom. Right now it says 20. I know we're looking at a 10-person thing now, but
Yeah, I wonder if we should just say limit the number of people allowed in the courtroom as recommended.
according to
Because, yeah, those
recommendation.
numbers keep changing. So
Yeah.
it's-
I think that's a good call. Yep. Okay, and then again, we just added those same bullet points on the different areas. I'm still looking for a little more feedback from those departments, and then community development, I think Corey's gone, but there was a lot of discussion that we had with Corey about all the documents that are turned in, the plans and so forth, and the handling of materials. So just put a little thing in there about using strategies to limit exposure on those. Work alone if practicable. So, and then the trigger point on this, so we're in level 4 here. So the mayor would be the activation for this with consultation with the city council, city manager, department heads. I think it's important to, when you look at this, to see that it allows the mayor, if he does make this activation, it can be automatically done with a declaration of emergency, or the mayor can just activate it by decree and, or by resolution. And that the mayor has the ability to activate all or parts of it. So the mayor could go up and look and see, okay, let's do this, this, and this, but not that, kind of a thing. So there can be some discretion there.
And didn't we talk about the mayor's designation of level 4 was required to be in writing?
Yes,
So I don't
you know,
see that under authority.
I remember us talking about it, maybe the verbiage didn't actually make it in there.
Yeah, I think maybe we should
It's
add
on
that.
last time.
I thought it was in there, but maybe,
It's in there, it's there,
Oh, where is
It
it?
was-
next to the last line,
Or you look at trigger?
the trigger.
all actions taken by, yeah,
Oh,
For
and- oh, it's in
activation or
trigger. Yeah, we should add
deactivation.
that to the authority section.
yeah.
That should actually be
That should be in the
in
authority.
the authority.
It was in there.
Thank you.
Okay. We did have that section of OSHA, we talked about that on Sunday, we can go ahead and go down.
More research to be done on that.
Yeah. So this red line here, you got the FMLA, just for the Family Medical Leave Act. I think, Lisa, you put most of this stuff on here. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes, I think, as we were discussing, this is where I just wanted to give employees and put in this policy some advice, or, you know, our policies on the leave and the travel. And I did want to point out, as the council was discussing, the last bullet point under employee leave says employees may not be eligible for paid administrative leave if they are quarantined due to voluntary personal travel to areas that are designated as 3 or higher. And they're not eligible for teleworking. I mean, obviously, if they are working at home, then we will pay them for that. So just take a look at that, the last bullet point in the employee leave. And then the employee travel, and again, if you would like to revise the last bullet point, because it does say, just going off of the literature that was out there, that the city cannot mandate that an employee cancel their personal travel other than for staffing needs. You know, if you'd like to soften that so that we can determine if and when, you know, during the emergency, and keep that more flexible, that's probably the language you would want to revise. But we do say that, you know, we're not going to, it's up to the city manager to determine work-related travel. And then also, if you're going to CDC level 2 or 3 designated areas, then you may be subject to the quarantining. And as we say above, that might be on your own dime.
So Chief, I was thinking about this, and I haven't run this past you, I've been thinking about it all day, is, you know, level 4, we have minimal disruption in our city services.
Right.
But in all honesty, if we had a level 5, where we actually have providing only minimum services at all, and that's water, things like that, but we
Yeah.
would shut down City Hall, I really think there is another level that we need to discuss, because we're only talking
Yeah.
about minimum disruption
Right.
in our city services.
Yeah,
There,
and I
there might be
was-
that point where we're shutting everything down, and that's a level 5. I still think level 4 should still be a declaration point, where we are saying, yes, we are minimizing our resource, or, you know, our
Yeah, I was thinking about that myself, about, is there another level that we need a program in there?
I wouldn't be opposed to a level 5. I think my concern would be is actively drafting it right now sends a very disturbing message to the public.
right, and that, but that's.
Right, I'd like to see it as, this is an infectious disease document, when we go to level 5, that level, we're talking about all sorts of emergencies. You know, the earthquake, infectious disease, and anything like that. So it looks like we're just developing a plan for when we get to that point.
It would be
For
pretty
anything that
extreme, I
happens.
think.
And I would agree with you, but I think but we need to be prepping that document.
Certainly in practical
But I
standpoint,
still
I
think
agree.
level 4 would be that place for a declaration. I think honestly, that
Agreed.
trigger, you are minimizing services to an extent, you're disrupting them to an extent, and there could be some catastrophic consequences if no change is made. But I think we should look at a level 5,
Level
maybe
5.
even a level 6. Maybe there's something in between that maybe could go to the next level. I don't know. I just don't
And
think
that
this
could
is
be,
the end.
By vote of the entire council or something to go to something
Right,
like that.
sure, yeah. Yeah, that requires the resolution instead of just a proclamation by the mayor. I don't know.
I would certainly be in support of doing the research, figuring out what our plan is, but just be judicious during this time as people become more panicked about things. I don't want them to suddenly assume that level 5 is tomorrow.
That's true, because people might see that and go, oh, this is a possibility.
Okay, and sorry, just going back to the employee travel, if you wanted to just eliminate the first 2 sentences of the last bullet point and just say, employees voluntarily traveling to high-risk areas may be required to use their personal leave if teleworking is not approved. And then also recognizing our authority to regulate or restrict employee vacations, I guess I should say, or travel in accordance with personnel policies to ensure appropriate staffing level. And that leaves it flexible because, things are changing, so I probably would, based upon the discussion, just recommend taking out the first 2 sentences of the last bullet point of the travel section.
And then once this is adopted, all employees are going to be required to understand this policy. So this is going to be a training thing right after we're done with this.
Will be a training. We have not discussed how we're going to employ that, but
It will not be all in one room.
I was gonna say, it's gonna.
It'll be our
by the
first
time it's gotta be
WebEx
a-
I think
video
it'd be
conference.
Distributed.
it'll be
Sounds good.
distributed, yeah. We'll make them watch this meeting and Sunday's meeting.
They didn't do anything wrong. Why do that to them?
Cruel and unusual punishment.
Okay. Thanks, Chief.
Yep, thank you.
And with that, Mr. Mayor, wouldn't mind if we could get Jake up here and talk about maybe what's going on working with our businesses. Is this appropriate time to discuss that?
Sure.
So just on this, just to
Yeah.
conclude, so we
Okay.
are recommending that you adopt this
Hold
as
on.
part of your emergency management plan. I just thought it would be nice to document it, so I did prepare the resolution for adoption.
So moved.
Second.
And if that could be with the
Discussed.
changes, let's see, I can just summarize those, that we're going to add back in the language about the health questionnaire and add back in or add a provision for if EMS is not available on the medical calls, and eliminating any reference to the number of people, because that's a moving target, and adding a in-writing clause to the authority and taking out the first 2 sentences of the last bullet point in travel, and also if the approval could include authorizing staff to add numbering to this rather than bullet points without having to bring it back to you.
That's a good idea. So
So,
moved. What Lisa said.
second to that?
Second.
All in favor?
I don't. Slow down.
Oh,
You know, okay?
I am not convinced that we belong at 4.
oh, this is just adopting
This is just the plan.
paperwork into our emergency management.
Okay, but I believe that a couple of the provisions in 4 ought to be in 3 if we're not at 4. And so I have some personal concern about that.
Well, to that point, when we're in the mayor's report, I think we're gonna have a pretty good discussion about that, I would hope, as to where we are. I don't know I think the delineation's pretty good. I don't know that I'd wanna change it.
Well, I guess the social distancing I almost think should be in 3, not 4.
Is that the only one that you're concerned about?
That's my big one. Because I believe the social distancing makes sense. I'm not sure.
To avoid getting to a 4.
Yeah.
I agree, I'll go with that.
Yeah?
Or you could put it in both.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, once it's in 3, it's in 4. Right.
Before you just increase the distance.
Yeah,
8 feet.
whatever, but I guess I
call
would,
that a friendly amendment.
okay. Then I would make that as a motion for a friendly amendment.
Did you get that down, Lisa?
I
Okay,
need to second the amendment.
There are no friendly amendments. They don't exist. I think this is common consent.
Yes, I agree with you, Bill.
Okay.
All right, with that change, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Tammy. All right, let's go to Jake, you want to talk something?
Yeah, so I want to talk about the businesses in the city. Earlier this morning, we were in a meeting with the lieutenant governor and the governor, and they were talking about some initiatives that they're, coming from the federal level to help with the small businesses that are being impacted by this breakout and the general shutdown. And there's a few
Jake?
things. Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, could you just speak up a little?
Yep,
Your mic more?
Right into the mic.
right into this mic, except for maybe
Mike, into the
affected.
mic and loud.
All right. So we were in meetings earlier today with the governor and lieutenant governor, talking about some of the initiatives that are coming from the federal level down to the state and will be administered through the counties to help out some of the businesses that are being impacted. Ones we're talking about specifically at this point are those ones that are small gatherings of 10 or more that are being shut down, such as the sit-down restaurants, bowling alleys, those theaters, those sorts of places. And
What was
so
that last one?
theaters,
Oh, theaters.
yeah, movie theaters, and theaters in general. And there's more too on that list, anything that's 10 or above. So what we're doing is we're actually working with Davis County to provide them with a list of businesses, working with Corey and Donna to compile that list of the different industries. And we're going to be reaching out to each of these businesses and under the governor's directive, we're going to let them know to tell people that they're open and to post somewhere that they are clean and that they're following the guidelines and keeping things sanitary. Our part is we're supposed to do a social media blitz and advertise on our website to go out and support our local businesses. Live life like normal, just make sure you keep your distances, keep yourself clean, be hygienic, but also look, if you're going to dine out, call in, see if you can get carry out, go through the drive-through, support the local businesses. Now, for the businesses themselves, we're going to be giving them some resources. We give them a list of resources and contacts, mostly at the county, where they can get some SBA loans and any other help that's going to come from the federal stimulus package. So we're going to be doing that here on a local level in conjunction with the county. So it's just in the preliminary stages. We're working on it, but so you guys know that we're working on it right here at the grassroots level.
And what was announced, if you didn't see the breaking news in our last session, that dining in all restaurants in Utah is now banned, restricted. So there is no dining in restaurants in the state of Utah, the entire state.
With that in mind, we have 3 restaurants right in the Dick's Marketplace that are dine-ins that would be significantly impacted. Can we make sure we reach out to them tomorrow?
Yeah, so that's our plan, is to hopefully encourage curbside pickup or,
How's it gonna work in a restricted parking lot? They don't have a lot of space there.
That's true.
well, even Uber Eats, DoorDash, whatever
Yeah,
it might be,
Grubhub,
have food
whatever.
available is what we
Right.
really need to be. Are they available, and work with those industries and advertise our businesses with them.
As a suggestion, if we could work with the property owner for who owns the Dick's property to maybe restrict some of the parking, because that's a very narrow area, and maybe
That's a
help
tight squeeze.
route so that we can actually get people through those 3 restaurants if they are able to do a takeaway.
What's the third one?
There's the Chinese restaurant, Mexican
Tony's.
restaurant, and the burger joint. Tony's,
Tony, okay,
Burgers.
the Mexican, I didn't,
Yeah.
I don't remember the name of it, sorry.
okay, that's fine, I didn't
And then
remember there
there's,
was one there.
the Great Empire. So there's 3 right there that are dine-in. I guess the Empire has takeout, but if we're trying to queue people to get in and out of there, it's not set up to do that right now.
They actually just had something before I left, and I can't remember, sorry, exactly what it was, but the state was on telling about a site where restaurants were being put on if you wanted to go out to dinner. Here was a area, somewhere you could go to find out what restaurants were offering.
There's 3 there by Dick's, but there's plenty others as well too. There's that don't have a drive-through.
Right.
So
The ones down by,
there's those south of yeah, and right, exactly right in there.
Yeah,
South.
and one of the other things too that they
Credit
mentioned, the governor or the lieutenant governor's wife, instead of going to the restaurant with her friends, they bought gift cards and promised they would be back later. So that helps them with their current revenue issues with those restaurants. So that's another thing that we'll be encouraging the residents is, buy gift cards to support those businesses if they don't want to go out to eat right at that time.
As I was mentioning to Paul before this meeting, I think one of the issues we're really going to run into quickly with all of these who are doing takeaway or fast food, no dining room, like the Chick-fil-A, some of these others, they're going to need support for traffic routing and how to figure that out, because it's going to be a nightmare. Because if you look at like the Chick-fil-A, their parking lot's always full because people are dining in, and if they're all coming through that drive-through, I'll have to go onto 400 to get home because we'll never be able to get down the frontage road.
That's true. That is true. Oh, and the other thing, we're supposed to let all residents know that grocery stores will remain open as well as their supply chain. There's no disruption in that.
With the social distancing
Yes,
recommendation in
with
the
the
stores.
social distancing, yeah. Yeah, there will be changes in hours.
I don't understand what the changes of hours by them. I think that actually accentuates the problem. because it
Stock and
forces-
shelves.
Yeah.
It forces more
The-
people through in fewer hours.
Yeah, maybe
My
it's-
understanding is that overtime hours and actually stocking shelves as well too, because the shelves have been so empty, they need that time.
And
get
they're
to
wiping things down that they
Wiping things
may not
down.
have scheduled that much wiping out downtime in the past.
Yeah, I've been told, Bill, that the reason they need that is because when they're queuing semis, because they're emptying so fast, it's become problematic for them to get in and out of these stores. So that's part of the reason they're trying to get people out of the parking lot so they can queue their vehicles.
Lots of things.
Okay.
Thank you. Item number 4, municipal code and fee schedule amendment. This was initiated by Randy Randall, but Lisa, you were going to talk about it?
Yes, I'm happy to cover that one. We just have some quick amendments to the municipal code as well as your fee schedule. So the amendments to the municipal code are recommended because Randy called me and said, look, we need to add 2 fees to our fee schedule. One is for people that want to do an address change because we're getting charged more money for address changes by the county. And the other is a street light connection fee because we're getting charged by Rocky Mountain for those fees. So we need to pass those on to the developers. But I mentioned to Randy that we already had a street addressing fee. So my recommendations to the ordinance are just to make reference to the fee schedule. So when somebody looks at this part of the ordinance about how to file for an address change, we're making reference and highlighting for staff that we actually have a fee for that and you need to charge it. So that's the quick fix on the ordinance. So staff's recommending adoption of ordinance number 2020-05, just to designate the Public Works Director for address changes and making reference to the fee schedule to hopefully start charging that fee. And then, yes,
Do you want to do that one now?
sure,
Or do you want to do the next one first?
that sounds great. Go ahead.
Make a motion that we approve ordinance 2020-05 with regard to changes or alterations of addresses and, you didn't do the posts, did you?
Right, this is just for
Of addresses.
address changes.
Second.
Motion to second. Any further discussion? If not, let's vote. Councilmember Meekum.
Aye.
Aye.
Fillmore.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Okay, on to the second one. What's that? Would be resolution 2020-03.
Yeah, so this is recommending amendments to our fee schedule. So again, we do have the address change fee that's already in here, but in reviewing it, we required the $500 deposit, and in talking to Randy, we don't really need that deposit because he just reviews these pretty quickly. There's no professional services on those. So we're recommending eliminating the $500 deposit and just charging the $100 fee on address changes. And then we're adding in actual costs for both the streetlight connection fee that Rocky Mountain will be assessing. we're just going to pass that through. I don't think we're going to charge anything more administratively. It's just a pass-through. Same thing on the streetlights. I decided since we're talking about the streetlight connection fee, we might as well add a line item for the cost of the streetlights. We currently charge developers for these, just like we charge them for street signs, but I just thought it'd be helpful to have it in the fee schedule as well. So we're just recommending these changes on the streetlight fees and address professional services deposit. So we recommend approval of Resolution 2020-03.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Were you an aye, Tammy?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, thanks. Let's go to item number 5. This is a fee schedule amendment regarding double dip burial rights fee. Lisa, you drafted that, so do you want to talk about that?
Yes, this is another quick fix. We don't want to keep you here too long tonight, but Cheryl in our front office, who deals with our cemetery and burial rights sales, raised an inconsistency in our fee schedule, which I always appreciate, but she pointed out that in our table, we impose a $1,000 fee for double-dep burial. But in the footnote section, it says double-dep burial spaces will be equal to the cost of 2 single burial spaces, which would be $1,200. So I wasn't sure which way the council wanted to go. Currently, I asked staff to go back and find out how much we've charged for the past 6 months to a year, or whenever the last double-dep burial rights we sold. And they did say that we were charging $1,000, which in my opinion, I would go with what the table says, not the footnote, in terms of statutory construction. So we have just been charging the $1,000, but in discussing this with staff, given the limited number of spaces, we actually recommend that you go up to the $1,200 as stated in the footnote. So I've given you 2 options. Option A, which is just changing the footnote and leaving $1,000 in the table, or option B, which staff recommends, which is changing the fee to $1,200, still changing the footnote because I don't want that inconsistency to happen again, so we'll just take that out and make reference to the table. So we're recommending option B and for Resolution 2020-06.
I move that we approve Resolution 2020-06, option B.
Second.
I have a motion to second. Any further discussion? If not, let's do a roll call vote. Councilmember Meekum.
Aye.
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 And thanks again to Cheryl for raising that inconsistency so we can fix that.
Thank you,
Before anyone
Cheryl,
else raised it.
where we are. Okay, next one. Let's
Somebody complains that their neighbor only paid $1,000, they paid $1,200.
let's do minute review and acceptance. So we have the March 3rd, 2020 work session minutes. We have the March 3rd, 2020 city council minutes, and we have the March 3rd, 2020 city council closed session minutes. Do we need to pull those up, or?
All of the attachment references say March 4th.
Oh, you're right.
It's
It's
March
actually March 4th. Yes,
Then I would motion we adopt the minutes as recorded with the March 4th date.
it
I'll
does.
second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you. City council report, anything, Councilmember Ivy?
We already know that the Landmarks Commission is struggling to get a quorum to meet, and that's ongoing.
Thank you. And I think you heard.
And we heard from the museum recently, so I don't think we have anything that we need to discuss.
Okay, all right. I met with McKinsey on the Landmarks Commission, you heard downstairs, and I'll talked with Brad a bit, we'll talk about that further, so. But thank you, no further to report? Okay.
The museum is closed at the moment, so.
Can I
further
ask
notice.
a question similar to that? Weren't we going to review the list of upcoming activities tonight?
That wasn't the plan tonight. I still think we're trying to figure out what that committee looks like, and I think
No,
we're.
the upcoming
Yeah.
events.
The event.
Oh,
events
yeah,
that
the
we
events. Yeah, I understood what you're saying. I was going for events. So I don't know where Leah is on the list of events, but we didn't have that for discussion tonight. Did you email to the council or to us?
I have it.
So as staff, we have it, but we haven't discussed, department heads and meeting with them, because there's been a number of other items that have come up that community garden, they're now starting to accept payment. Does that proceed? I think as staff, we'd first like to have a conversation with them to find out, and then bring those recommendations from staff to you.
Well, for example, there's a tree board meeting, I believe, tomorrow night scheduled.
They already
Canceled
canceled.
on Sunday.
They canceled it?
Yeah, they did cancel.
Hopefully the committee meetings have been canceled.
All right, that's what I was
And when you
most
read-
immediately concerned about.
And then we might as well mention that the planning commission meeting will also be canceled.
That's one item off my report.
Oh, well.
Well, your report's done now.
Okay, thank you. Number 8, mayor's report. So, Councilwoman Fillmore, I want to thank you for your prayer that you gave as we started. I saw your name there, and I thought we'd get somebody here in person, but I thought, no, we can do it over the phone. You gave a very moving and emotional prayer, and you prayed for all that are involved. And I think that we need to keep in mind, I'm in support. I've talked with other mayors, solidarity and support of all that's taking place, because this is a serious situation. But I also get concerned when my first 3 conversations today was with one of our employees who has potentially a couple daughters out of work because of this. When I then stepped by Dick's and I talked to a restaurant owner that's a resident of our city that says he cannot survive being closed down maybe 4 weeks. And then when I get to my office, and the first thing is I talk to a business owner that installs windows. And how do you work from home when you're installing windows, when you have to build windows on your floor? You have to go put those windows in homes. So this stretches not just beyond an infectious disease, but this stretches to a potential recession and depression. 8,000 points lost off the Dow. If we go too far with this, a depression, and everybody says it'll never get this bad with COVID, but we're thinking it might. A depression leads to people losing businesses and jobs, and depression themselves, and potential suicide. So this is a very, very, and I'm sure our leaders are thinking of this. I saw where Governor Herbert called a task force yesterday on employment, okay? So hopefully they're thinking about it long and hard. Hopefully that these shutdowns, we just have to hope don't continue for a long time, because, somebody like the NBA can shut down for a bit and they'll just be fine. But the majority of our residents in this city don't face that luxury. And many of you that are employed by the government, your paychecks will continue to come. There's many of us here on the council that work with people or have our own businesses, and those paychecks won't continue to come. So this is something that I think we have to keep in mind too, that it's just not COVID, but it's also employment and recession, and as much as Jake says, and I'm glad for that report, Jake, that we can do something, once a person's lost a business, it's gone. It doesn't do much good for them after their business is gone, okay? So maybe they can get back on their feet. So I just hope that we could find a quick resolution to this, that we can find, I applaud everything that we've done within the city. I put the YouTube video out last night, and everything I think that we're doing is wonderful, and it's protecting our employees, and it's protecting our citizens as well too. But please, as Councilwoman Fillmore said, pray for a quick resolution to this, because there's not a lot of people that can weather this for a real long time from an economic standpoint. There really isn't. I mean, the majority of our economy is made up of 80% of small businesses. And it's serious in that regard as well too. So we have seriousness on both sides. And I think that's all for my report. I just appreciate working with all of you. Oh, one other thing in my report. I've talked with Brant and with the chief and with Lisa about declaring state of emergency. I did a lot of research this afternoon on state of emergencies. FEMA right now is not granting any money. A state of emergency would allow us to without having any resolution, cancel all meetings. I want to be careful with how I approach that. I would like to see if we get to that point that there's a reason for it, you know, that in declaring a state of emergency. I think it got the governor in doing it a couple of weeks ago. It was beneficial financially, brought the seriousness of it, but I'm open to input from anyone at any time in that regard as well too. I think I've hit my highlights. Any questions for me?
Well, to comment on, I don't think there is an incentive for financial gain for a state of emergency. Where I see it, and I've said this to people in the community many times, it's not your federal government who gets involved in your business. You can complain about them all you want, but it's 3 people on your city council who can affect your life faster than anyone else. To me, a state of emergency represents a vigilance. If we're really serious about trying to flatten the curve to get us through this quickly, then to me, a state of emergency lets people know this is serious. This is not something that's going to pass. And if our intent is to help people weather this storm in the quickest way possible, then I think a declaration at a city level provides that level of vigilance. We're pretty good about it already. I've gotten calls from several people like, hey, how you doing? You guys need anything? That sort of call. But that doesn't reach everyone in our community. That reaches specific social groups, but that doesn't reach everyone. So from my perspective, Mayor, I would highly recommend that we do that, not for any financial reason, but so that we can be vigilant, get through this in a quick fashion, and follow the lead. Because what I see is, if you look at Spain, you look at Italy, that took too long to tell their people this was serious. Now their economies are effectively shut down because everyone's under house arrest. And I don't want to get to that point inside our community. So I would recommend you give that serious consideration.
Thank you. Thank you for the input. That's what I'm looking for. Thank you.
I have some direct correspondence from Italy. And what was done fast enough, not too fast, too severe, not severe enough, I don't know that I'm in a position to know, but we talked to my wife's cousin this afternoon, who is affected by the house arrest. They can have one person go to a store on a weekly basis for food. He's forbidden to ride his bicycle and he's a distance cyclist. He's forbidden to ride his bicycle because if there's an accident and he's hurt, he'll take a hospital bed that they need for something else. But at this same point in time, he knows no one who has had the virus, and therefore no one who has died from the virus. And he lives in northern Italy. When we talked Sunday about softening the rhetoric and the blow by emphasizing to people that the vast majority of people that get it recover. And I guess, like I say, I don't know that I'm the one that knows, but when you close every restaurant in the state, I think there's some other intermediate things that could have been done, like, you know what, you're qualified for 150 seating, your seating just went to 75 or 50 or something, so that people can stay open and do something. Now, I'm not gonna say that I think that they were wrong, because I'm not qualified to say that. But I think to some degree, we have to try to keep up some normalcy and give people the ability to support themselves. I was in Great Clips yesterday. I was the third customer of the day at 4 o'clock. They had as many people in there to take care of people as they had all day. They're not gonna be open very long.
They're not. And this restaurant owner I talked to today is a resident here of restaurants in another city, indicated that they don't have a drive-through. And so he was already thinking, he knew this announcement was coming. He said, so I guess what we're going to have to do is have people, if they can't come in and order, what I was going to do, they can come in and order, because they're farther away from their hand when they order than when they go to the drive-through and they touch their hand. When they get they'll order, we'll tell them we'll bring them out to the car. Or now maybe if they can't come inside, I mean, he's going to have his people outside trying to take orders. It's a reality. To a business like that, and this is a business you're all going to know it's been around for ages, and that's why I say the COVID-19 is serious, and the recession, possibly depression, is serious as well too. So we need to pray and find a quick solution for this, and hopefully that we cross our fingers, we don't have businesses shut down too long.
I completely agree with you. I really think, and this is what I've seen professionally. I mean, I know people who are at the Department of Health who don't wash their hands when they leave the bathroom. You're thinking, you work at the Department of Health. Why don't you have that basic level of vigilance in your own life? You get, I know that's crass, but it's true. So you get people who now have these signs that say, it's 20 seconds. This is what you're going to do to potentially hurt your coworker. Vigilance changes. People actually do things under these duress situations that they don't normally do, in terms of they're paying attention to simple things. It's the same analogy applies to a speed limit sign. You all know what it says, but until you see the flashing lights or you get the ticket, your vigilance about following the speed is a lot less. But if there was a police officer on every intersection that you saw, you would obey that speed limit. So from my perspective, and I'm not trying to say anything negative about business owners. I want them to come through this too, but I don't want this to last for months and months and months because we don't take the simple steps of doing the things that we can reasonably do in a short period of time. And what's the level of vigilance in the community? I don't know. I can tell you there's a lot more people paying attention today that there's been an announcement about restaurants. They're probably a lot more vigilant, but it's going to come down to, and this is in the mayor's prerogative, as to at what point do we decide that vigilance needs to get higher? Is that a trigger point of number of people that are infected? That's the mayor's prerogative. To me, it's a vigilance issue. Let's not wait too long to be vigilant.
Thank you. And I hope that it's aware to all our citizens and any that will watching this now or will watch it later. I applaud that vigilance has been raised, that everyone's going to be more careful because we have done all this, and hope they use good caution, good common sense. There's so many just simple things that we can do, which you just brought up, George, that a lot of people aren't even doing at the health department. So please, 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 everyone, do all these simple things. And thank you, everyone, for all you're doing. Did you want to say something, Lisa?
Well, I just wanted to add that I do recommend seriously thinking about entering into declaring the local emergency as much for being eligible for funds as having these operational authority that is provided in the statute and entering into mutual aid agreements and things like that. I just like to be prepared. You can only put this in place for 30 days. The mayor can only put it in place for 30 days, and then it has to come back to the council to actually extend it. So it is a limited time frame, but in terms of being prepared, you know, maybe today isn't the day, but I think we need to be prepared to have that. And if, you know, it's a matter of losing a day, you know, if you already have it in place, you're not going to lose that day of trying to implement something, so.
Thank you. Brent, city manager's report.
For me, I just have one item. I need to officially go on record as requested by our city attorney and admit that the City Managers Association only today canceled their conference in April. So it wasn't the city attorneys being stubborn. City managers were being pretty stubborn too.
City managers are officially worse than the city attorneys.
We were waiting for direction from the league, who has officially canceled the conference. So I don't know why we waited for that, but
True confession.
Lisa needed me to go on record since I went on record last 2 weeks ago. So anyway, but I do have a question as far as, you know, if we're not declaring a local emergency, are we possibly discussing declaring that we're in level 4 without a local emergency, so we can implement those triggers in level 4? Because we are operating under level 4 at this time, and that can only be declared by you.
And as I said to you earlier, we are under level 4. I'm declaring we're under level 4.
Okay. And we need that in writing, don't we?
Yeah, we happen to have that.
Yep.
Just by chance.
Well, I'll hand it to
But
you.
you're not gonna hand it down the road, right?
Come over and sign it after we leave.
So I just wanted to get that officially on record, that we will operate
Yes.
under level 4. And as we stated, I think Chief and Lisa and Alex and I will look at other levels. I think there is opportunity as we build this plan out, not just for this pandemic, but any future pandemics. We need to really, Alex and Chief have done an excellent job. I mean, it's just fascinating to see them work so quickly, and I know they've been working really hard. Anyway, so I appreciate and applaud them for their efforts.
They've been doing amazing. I've worked with both of them lots over the last week. It's been wonderful. Yeah. Thank you so much.
I don't have anything else. Unless there's
I
questions.
will communicate that through the community court to everyone tonight.
Well, wait a minute, Bill. If you're doing that, okay, this is a disconnect for me, because if we're saying we're level 4, but it's not an emergency, or we're operating or we're not declaring a local state of emergency, that's cognitive dissonance for me, because we're saying we're at our highest operational level, but it's
Well,
not a
so
problem.
far.
Well, okay, level 5, level 6, we'll worry about later. I just, if you communicate it through the citizen core, you see where I'm going? I'm not sure that we can say we're at level 4, but it's not an emergency.
Well, the fact that I didn't agree doesn't mean that he didn't do it. He just said he put it at level 4 and he's signing the paper for it, so.
Well, I don't want to prevent him
I-
from signing the paper, but I'm
Well, I
just,
do like the idea of allowing staff to think about this. We do have a PIO on this, and maybe it's the city that says, hey, we've adopted this infectious response plan, we've invoked level 4, here's a copy of the plan on our website. So I think it's probably something that we would like to have control of the message and send
So
it
you
out
don't
through the
want me
city.
to send it to the community court?
Not tonight, I think let's wait and have some, I think the chief wanted to say something, but that would be my preference, to have some sort of written response that we can put on our website. We will copy the council on all of that, then you can distribute the unified message that has been vetted.
So everything that is on that level 4, I said I agree with, we're going to level 4. I would like, been doing my research this afternoon, but if any of you staff can provide me more with what the level of emergency, then please get that to me, because it sounds like Councilman McEwen is almost saying a level 4 is the same thing as a level of emergency.
it is. It's the same operational procedure to me, so it's almost like, don't worry, I'm not bleeding out, but I am. I mean, you can't, to me, you can't have it both ways. Either you're at level 3 or level 4, and if you're at level 4, it goes back to that vigilance thing. If you're already there, don't send a mixed message to the public.
I think the greatest benefit, and Lisa, if you can go into a little bit more detail about the statutes and what that declaration means operationally, those are the true benefits in declaring that today. And I don't know if you want to address that, Lisa, if you can address that.
Yeah, so the statute does say that once the mayor invokes the local emergency, then the chief executive officer, which is the mayor, has additional authority for using all available resources of the political subdivision as necessary to manage the state of emergency. So we're going to have some budgetary control, employing measures and giving direction to local officers and agencies, and securing compliance with, rules and regulations that are in place by the state. He can also issue an order for the evacuation of part of the city from any area, recommend routes and modes of transportation if we have to evacuate, suspend the sale of alcoholic beverages during that evacuation, control ingress and egress from the disaster area, including controlling the movement of persons. That might be the most applicable one as we look at some of the issues that we'll be facing.
How is that applicable?
Just for instance, controlling the movement of, either, as we're talking about, traffic circulation, or restaurants, or things like that. Not that I'm recommending going into that. I think we're still going to rely on the health department for determining restaurant access and things like that, but we may have some control over modes of access within the city, and where people are going. And some other for, removing debris and things that are not necessarily relevant in this situation, but also authorizing to enter upon private land or waters to perform necessary tasks, and invoking mutual aid agreements, and other items. But I think those are the highlights, and so there are some, and as I've said, I think that I'm not saying it's broad discretion, but in reviewing what Salt Lake City did for they adopted their proclamation of an emergency, and then they adopted another proclamation saying, okay, here's how we're mending our open meetings, and here's what we're doing, with sick leave, and so they implemented some of those policies that just said, okay, during this emergency, these are some additional operational requirements that we're going to impose, rather than having to amend your policies.
That's a timeliness issue, as Councilmember McKeon was mentioning, that there's an opportunity for you to implement those things right away instead of us saying it's already happened and now that we're scrambling to address it. When it's happened, you can now address it without coming back to the council or having a different discussion or trying to find, time to sign that proclamation, whatever it might be. I think there's a timeliness issue there. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to invoke or use any of that authority, but you have that option to do so.
Well, and it's invoked for 30 days, which I think the next 30 days are going to be critical.
They are going to be critical.
So, if I might chime in, thinking back to the 2011 windstorm, obviously that was something that we looked at. I went to the mayor at that time and said, Mayor, I think we need to declare a local disaster or local emergency. It was kind of a no-brainer. We did it. We were the first to do it in the county, and it was the right thing to do. On this case, I think we've had a lot of hand-wringing over it as far as when we should do this, because we were worried about the message that it would send and create panic. I think the panic is already there. It's already out there. If you look at the pros and cons of declaring, I think from a practical point of view, it makes a lot of sense to declare. I think what we're trying to wrestle with here is the emotional response to that kind of a declaration. And I think that's where our messaging can come into play, and where we can use good PIO messaging techniques, or just good messaging to get it out. I have been resistant to it, and even as of today, I was this morning thinking, do we do this now? Do we wait for the county to do it? And it's something that I still kind of wrestle with, but from a practical point of view, if you look at the pros and cons, I think that the scales are tipped clearly to the declaration. The only reservation would be the emotional response to it, and I think we can control the message on that.
I know, Mr. Mayor, this is different than what I had said to you earlier this morning, but again, even with this fast pace, you mentioned it only a little over a week ago, you were at a basketball game and coronavirus wasn't an issue. There was a jazz game. Things are moving quickly. Even since this morning, now we've had all of our restaurants in the state of, dine-in restaurants in the state of Utah prohibited or restricted. I mean, that's a huge change that signals that it's constantly evolving. So even my opinion has slightly changed to, I see there being greater benefit at this point of declaring a local emergency. Again, not to incite panic, but just give that opportunity for us to act more swiftly when we need to.
Okay.
Somehow I'm not seeing the pros and cons.
I
That's just me, but I feel like saying we're going to operate at a level 4 gives us the opportunity to have some things different that we didn't have before without saying it's a full emergency. I just feel like the boy who cried wolf. If you've declared an emergency, how much more, now it's a really big emergency, can you say to delineate to the public?
But yeah, let me turn that argument back around. How do you say you're at level 4, you're reducing services, you're reducing hours, you're implementing all these procedures in the police department, but say it's not an emergency? You've got nowhere left to go on your ladder, you're at the top. So to me, saying a declared state of emergency doesn't, like the chief's saying, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily dealing with the hand-wringing. That's going to happen anyway, but the dynamic has shifted significantly to the point where, from my perspective, I'd rather be first to say, look, we recognize this, we're going to go ahead and invoke this so that we have the authority to move and be nimble to support and take care of our citizens, rather than let's get together another meeting of the city council and decide whether or not this is something we can do. It doesn't hurt us. I mean, obviously that means we have to rely on the leadership of the mayor not to abuse any of the authority granted under a declaration of emergency, but he can do that without us anyway. So it's not like the city council is going to put a rein on the mayor with that. And I think the messaging is fine to say, look, we are recognizing this is important. We want you to be vigilant. We want you to do all these things. And this will hopefully pass faster if we're paying attention. And if we get to the end of 30 days, like, did we cry wolf because it's too early? Well, CDC is saying 8 weeks. You know, the library's closed to April 1st for a reevaluation at that point. I think that's already being considered at county and state levels. But if we're not in front of it and getting our citizens and residents positioned to think in the way of, hey, I really do need to be 6 feet apart from somebody, they're not going to take it seriously. They don't right now.
Well, and for example, the Councilman McEwen mentioned Chick-fil-A and the traffic pattern going in and out of there. And when he first mentioned that to me, I started thinking about their parking lot, and he mentioned they could be backing out onto Marketplace Drive. I started thinking about, okay, do we make a lane out there on Marketplace Drive? And if we do that, what kind of liabilities are we creating? But if we're working under a declaration, an emergency declaration, it kind of does open up some of those abilities to make those decisions operating under the emergency declaration. That I think gives us a little more leeway that way, and maybe a little more protection, as long as we're doing things right. But those kind of decisions that we can make, that maybe on the ground we can be a little more nimble with, without having to go through a long process, or a process that takes days when you should be making decisions in minutes.
And honestly, I have no problem with if the mayor said we're doing one tonight and then 30 days from now we thought it wasn't necessary, it shuts down. But I think we'll be back here in 30 days evaluating if it's another 15 or another 30. And I think that's reasonable for us to lend that support. I mean, I've got around me all the professional staff members recognizing that there's upside, there's the nimbleness. I think it'd be great if the chief had the authority to say, look, we don't want you crashing on Frontage Road, but we'd like to make sure that Chick-fil-A can stay open, so we're going to go talk to MTC and the other owners and say, look, we need you to accommodate them. Same thing for the Dick's parking lot. We need you to accommodate them, and this is to promote helping them out, as well as making sure that we maintain civil order in this. I don't know what it even looks like that out there, or what it will look like tomorrow when people can't go into a restaurant. It's going to be a different situation. I'd prefer to give them the ability to make
the decisions we pay them to make, which is the smart professional decisions and not necessarily involve us, like we talked about on Sunday, administrative, legislative. In this case, I think we need to empower the administrative portion of our city to do what they do best.
Well, we've gone through the document that they put together. We're at a level 4. We all we're able to participate in that. I think in declaring a state of emergency, we don't have, I appreciate all your input. We don't necessarily have to convene as a council to declare a state of emergency. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
The authority lies with the mayor.
So, thanks for all your input. I'll stay in close contact with the chief and Brent and Lisa. And we've tried to be on top of this from moment one. I know when I called the county health, Brian Hatch, 2 weeks ago Tuesday, he said we were the first city that had reached out to him. The work that the chief and Alex and others did on putting this plan together. And I was in a meeting with county health department officials yesterday on the phone, and also mayors and city managers, and we were doing very well. We were ahead of the curve, as I told the chief. So yes, we need to stay that way. So anything else, Brent?
So where are we? We're at level 4, but not at a state of emergency, or we're at level 4 and are at a state of emergency?
That is for the mayor to decide. There's 2 documents that have been prepared, and he could sign either one of them or not sign them at all. But right now, administratively, we are operating at level 4 until we get till the mayor decides and signs one of the documents or tells us to back off.
Okay. And I'm signing the level 4 document for sure.
But not the other one?
And I'll look at those guidelines that Lisa has just a bit further.
Okay,
On the state of
can we
emergency.
request that you let us know what you signed, please?
Yes, level 4 right now. And
Okay,
I'll
you've
let you
done
know.
that, let us know on the other one.
Yes.
I presume COG is canceled tomorrow?
COG is canceled tomorrow, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep,
I hadn't heard that said, so.
Closed session, does anybody have a need? If not, look for motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is
Yep.
that all?
Good night, council's adjourned.
Well, Mayor, that's why you're paid the big bucks.